Oh my God.
In what meteorologists are describing as a once-in-a-century weather event, the state of Queensland has been gripped by a relentless atmospheric river, unleashing a deluge that has submerged entire townships, severed critical infrastructure, and prompted the largest emergency rescue operation in the region's modern history. The crisis began in early January 2026, when a slow-moving low-pressure system coupled with a strengthened La Niña pattern stalled over the Coral Sea. What started as heavy tropical showers quickly escalated into a catastrophic rainfall event. Over a period of 72 hours, parts of southeast Queensland and the Wide Bay Burnett region recorded over 600 millimeters of rain, surpassing their average annual rainfall in just 3 days. As the ground reached its saturation point, the runoff had nowhere to go. River systems including the Brisbane, Bremer, and Mary Rivers swelled at alarming rates, breaching their banks and triggering flash flood warnings that sent residents scrambling for higher ground in the middle of the night. The devastation is most visible in the urban centers and rural heartlands alike. In the capital city of Brisbane, the river peaked at levels not seen since the 2011 floods, inundating low-lying suburbs such as Milton, Rosalie, and West End. The Queensland Department of Transport and Main Roads reported that over 1,500 kilometers of the state's road network have been damaged or rendered impassable. The Bruce Highway, the state's primary arterial artery, was cut off at multiple points, effectively isolating North Queensland from the southeast corner. Rail services were suspended as tracks were washed away, and Brisbane's ferry terminals suffered significant structural damage from debris floating downstream at high velocities. At the height of the storm, Energex reported that over 120,000 homes and businesses were without power. Substations were decommissioned as a safety precaution against rising waters, and telecommunication towers in remote areas failed, leaving thousands without a way to call for help. Queensland Fire and Emergency Services, QFES, and the State Emergency Service, SES, have been working around the clock. Since the onset of the flooding, swift water rescue teams have performed over 450 successful extractions. Tragically, the authorities have confirmed 5 fatalities, individuals who were swept away while attempting to cross flooded roadways. Premier Stephen Miles issued a stern warning to the public. If it's flooded, forget it. No journey is worth your life. In the town of Gympie, which faced its worst flooding in decades, the community spirit has been the only silver lining. Local mud armies, volunteers equipped with shovels and pressure washers, have already begun the grueling task of cleaning out homes as soon as the water recedes, embodying the resilient spirit known as Queensland grit. The economic fallout is expected to reach billions of dollars. Queensland's agricultural sector, a cornerstone of the Australian economy, has taken a massive hit. Thousands of head of cattle have been lost in the inland regions, and sugarcane and fruit plantations in the north have been decimated. Economists warn that the disruption to the supply chain will likely lead to a spike in grocery prices across Australia, particularly for fresh produce. Furthermore, the insurance industry is bracing for a surge in claims, with preliminary estimates suggesting that the total insured losses could exceed 2.5 billion Australian dollars. This latest disaster has reignited the fierce debate over urban planning and climate change adaptation. Environmental scientists argue that the increasing frequency and intensity of these rain bombs are direct consequences of a warming atmosphere. We can no longer build for the climate of the past, says Dr. Sarah Jenkins, a climate researcher at the University of Queensland. Our drainage systems, levee banks, and home designs must be overhauled to withstand a future where extreme weather is the new normal. The Queensland government has announced an initial $500 million recovery package, focusing on immediate disaster relief and the restoration of essential services. However, experts agree that long-term resilience will require a fundamental shift in how the state manages its water catchments and urban sprawl. As the rain clouds finally begin to clear, the true scale of the disaster is being revealed. For many Queenslanders, the trauma of losing their homes and belongings is compounded by the daunting task of rebuilding. For now, the focus remains on the recovery phase. From the halls of Parliament House to the muddy streets of Ipswich, the message is clear. Queensland will recover, but the scars left by the 2026 floods will remain for generations to come. Meanwhile, the city of Sydney and its surrounding metropolitan reaches are currently grappling with one of the most severe hydrological crises in the nation's history. A relentless East Coast low weather system has parked itself over the New South Wales coastline, dumping a month's worth of rain in less than 24 hours, triggering catastrophic flooding that has displaced thousands and paralyzed the Southern Hemisphere's largest economic hub. The disaster began in mid-January 2026, when a high-pressure system over the Tasman Sea blocked a deep, low-pressure trough, forcing it to remain stationary over the Sydney Basin. This phenomenon, fueled by record-high sea surface temperatures, created a conveyor belt of moisture-laden air. The Bureau of Meteorology reported that Sydney's Observatory Hill recorded 350 millimeters of rain within a 48-hour window. However, the crisis was most acute in the western suburbs and the Blue Mountains, where orographic lift intensified the downpour, leading to unprecedented runoff into the Warragamba Dam, Sydney's primary water reservoir, which began spilling at a rate equivalent to the volume of Sydney Harbour every 24 hours. While the CBD faced localized flash flooding and transport chaos, the true catastrophe unfolded in the Hawkesbury-Nepean Valley. This region, often described as a bathtub due to its unique topography, saw river levels surpass the heights reached during the infamous 1990 and 2022 floods. Townships such as Windsor, Richmond, and North Richmond were effectively turned into islands. As the Hawkesbury River peaked at 15.5 meters, hundreds of homes were submerged to their rooflines. The New South Wales State Emergency Service issued mandatory evacuation orders for over 60,000 residents, many of whom had only recently finished rebuilding from previous disasters. The infrastructure of Greater Sydney has been pushed to a breaking point. Key transport arteries, including the M4 Western Motorway and sections of the Princes Highway, were closed due to landslides and water over the road. The Sydney Trains network suffered catastrophic failures as signalling equipment in low-lying areas was inundated. The T1 Western Line and the Blue Mountains Line were suspended, leaving tens of thousands of commuters stranded. Sydney ferries were also cancelled as the Parramatta River became a raging torrent filled with hazardous debris, including shipping containers and uprooted trees. Endeavour Energy and Ausgrid reported that approximately 85,000 properties lost power as rising waters forced the preemptive shutdown of electrical substations to prevent explosions and long-term damage. Water treatment plants in the west were also compromised, leading to boil water alerts for several local government areas. Premier Chris Minns declared a state of natural disaster for 22 local government areas, LGAs, invoking emergency powers to streamline relief efforts. The Australian Defence Force, ADF, was deployed under Operation Flood Assist, utilizing MRH-90 Taipan helicopters to rescue residents trapped on rooftops in the Londonderry and Pitt Town areas. As of January 19, 2026, the NSW police have confirmed 3 fatalities: 2 motorists whose vehicles were swept away by flash flooding in the Illawarra region, and an elderly man in Parramatta. Commissioner of the NSWSES stated, "Our volunteers have conducted over 600 flood rescues in the last 48 hours. These are high-risk operations involving swift water technicians working in near-zero visibility." The economic impact on Sydney is projected to exceed 3.8 billion Australian dollars. Beyond the immediate damage to residential property, the Sydney market supply chain has been severed. The fertile plains of the Hawkesbury, which provide a significant portion of Sydney's leafy green vegetables, are underwater. Farmers have reported total crop losses, which is expected to lead to a 30% increase in food prices across the state in the coming weeks. Furthermore, the construction sector, already struggling with labor shortages, has ground to a halt, with major projects like the Sydney Metro West facing significant delays due to site inundation and soil instability. This event has reignited a fierce political debate regarding urban development on flood-prone land. Critics argue that successive governments have allowed high-density housing in the Hawkesbury-Nepean Valley, despite known risks. "We are seeing the consequences of poor planning meeting an energized climate," said an urban planning expert from the University of New South Wales, UNSW. "We cannot continue to put families in harm's way. The cost of recovery is becoming unsustainable for the taxpayer." The 2026 flood has prompted calls for the urgent raising of the Warragamba Dam wall, a controversial proposal that pits flood mitigation against the preservation of Aboriginal heritage and environmental biodiversity. As the rain finally begins to ease, the long cleanup phase begins. The Insurance Council of Australia, ICA, has designated the event a catastrophe, meaning claims will be prioritized. However, for many residents, the trauma is psychological. "This is the third time in 5 years I've lost everything," said one Richmond resident. "Insurance is unaffordable now. We don't know where else to go." The NSW government has opened 15 evacuation centers across the city, providing emergency accommodation, mental health support, and financial grants.
So